Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Intertie Deviation Settlement Tariff Clarification Stakeholder Meeting. My name is Brenda Kern on behalf of the stakeholder group. We are welcoming you to a California ISO meeting. Today, we'll go over a few housekeeping reminders as this call is being recorded for informational and community purposes only. Any related transcriptions should not be reprinted without the ISO's permission. And we will also want to, if you have any technical issues, please send them to our Inteller events, Stacy. She'll be on there to help. But also we'll go over some instructions on raising your hand to ask a question. The raise hand icon is located when you press the participant and chat panels. So it will be on the bottom right of your screen. Also, if you're just dialed in to the phone line, *3 will be the way to get added to the queue. As a reminder, make sure you state your full name and affiliation before making a comment. And also, we welcome all questions through chat and verbal. And now I'll go ahead and introduce the team. I believe Danny Johnson will go ahead and introduce the team that's here with us. And then we also have David and Jenny. Go ahead, Danny. Oh, Danny, you're on mute, double mute. Just want to let you know. Go ahead.
That's even better because I got to practice on my intro. Just want to say good morning to everybody and thank you for joining us. It's a beautiful Thursday morning in Sacramento and hopefully it's the same wherever you're calling in. This should be a short call today. We have identified a tariff clarification that we want to make. The tariff doesn't necessarily reflect what was stakeholdered or implemented, and that's why we're here today, is to kind of publicly discuss the clarification we're planning to make and answer any questions you may have. The issue in question is the tariff section 30.5.7. This is the IDS policy that the ISO stakeholdered a few years ago. Essentially, that policy tried to encourage the submission of the transmission profile of E-tags by T40. That is an important timeline because T40 is prior to when we run the RTPD that contains the first financially binding 15-minute market for the next hour. So the idea is we want to get the tags in and then start running financially binding markets with expected interchange. The policy calls for zeroing out the FMM schedules if the E-tag isn't received, and that was pretty clear in the policy. Where there seems to have been a little clarification needed is that the policy allows for the reinstatement of the FMM schedules to the extent that E-tags are received between T40 and T20. There are different times within that window which would dictate which FMM runs in the following hour the transactions would get to be considered in. We have a table that kind of helps walk through that on the next slide. But that's the clarification we want to make, is to the extent that a tag is received in that window and received by that T20 NASB deadline, it will be considered to the extent possible in the market runs. This is, again, what was implemented, what's in practice right now. It is a positive from an operational perspective because ultimately this energy is going to flow, right? If it gets tagged by T20, it's going to flow. So it's aligning our market results with the actual physical system flows, which is good from our perspective. And it also it allows for tag submission up to that T20 deadline as required by NASB, but does encourage submission still by T40. David, Jenny, is there anything that you'd want to add?
No, I think, Danny, you covered it, and that, right, that in case there's any lingering confusion, the point of these tariff changes is to conform the tariff to how system is configured today and what current practice is. So, you know, really from the perspective of the stakeholder or market participant, this should be a non-event, a non-issue in terms of what you see happening on your end with Intertie schedules. So that's, I mean, hopefully good from your perspective. Nothing should be changing on the market participant end of things.
Thanks for flagging that, David. Yeah, that's the main takeaway, is nothing's changing with your day-to-day operations. Well, do we want to go to the next slide, Brenda, and kind of walk through the table? So this is a table. It's in the little notice and kind of short paper we put out, and it shows when tags are submitted, when they'll be considered by. This is forward-looking, so you see the operating interval like 10 a.m. or 10 p.m. It can be either. You get to choose. That 9:20 in the fifth row, that is the that it would be T40 as reference to the hour before. So it depends which way you want to look at the time, but that's the deadline that IDS sets. And so it's saying if anything's not received by 9:20, all of the FMMs in the following hour will be zeroed out. And the next important row is the FMM process start. And so you have the RTPD5, which contains that first financially binding interval from 10 to 10:15. That's kicking off at 9:22:30, roughly. So you don't get something in by T40. There's not enough time to process these within our systems to be considered in that first financially binding interval, but you get 3 more chances throughout the hour, right? The next financially binding interval is kicking off at 9:37 and 30 seconds. So that's about T22.5. So any E-tag that was submitted between that T40, so 9:20, and T22.5, so 9:37, that would get to be considered in that next RTPD run, which is the financially binding interval from 10:15 to 10:30. Now, there is another window. It's pretty short between that FMM or that second run and the third run to get something in by T20 where it could be considered. To the extent it is, again, the schedule would be reinstated in the FMM run. Following T20, though, if no tags submitted, the existing implementation and the going forward implementation would still be to zero out that schedule in the market runs. So I hope that helps kind of clarify what the existing implementation is and the tagging deadlines. David, Jenny?
No, I agree with that. I think that chart is there to hopefully make it more, the examples more concrete, because when we talk about the different tagging rules in a sort of, in theory, it becomes sort of hard to see the pieces fitting together. But hopefully, if that's a problem for anyone here, hopefully seeing it in, actual times at the reference hour makes the pieces fit together more easily. So yeah, no, nothing to add there beyond that.
Okay, I think the next 3 or 4 slides are just the proposed tariff clarification and language. And I think there was a bit of rewording that was done here, David. So I can let you walk through this if you want, or what may be more effective, since this language was kind of posted in our paper that we put out about a week ago, seeing if there's any questions on the phone line about the proposed changes on either this or any of the next 3 slides. But
yeah,
I turn it over to you, David.
Yeah, sure. I'll just sort of explain the thought process on how the revised section 30.5.7 was, what the thought process was, and then we'll open it to questions. I won't go through everything, but just high level. So section 30.5.7, as you see on the screen there, just the high level introductory thing that's meant to just sort of have an introductory statement about what these e-tagging requirements are meant to do. And it's again, just saying, in addition to complying with all generally applicable e-tagging requirements, the point being that these tariff rules are not superseding or supplanting the NERC rules. These are things that sit on top of those existing rules. Nothing's supposed to be inconsistent with the generally applicable rules that exist everywhere. So, and then the last sentence there saying such scheduling coordinators are also subject to FMM schedule consequences specified in this section 30.5. So again, point being, we have the generally applicable tagging rules, and then we have these additional market rules that we'll get into. So then next slide. there, thank you. So what this section provides, section 30.5.7.1, is saying that we're defining a tagging cutoff for the 4 FMM intervals of the hour. And so the first 2 intervals correspond to getting the tagging information in a couple minutes before the FMM run starts. So we say for the first FMM interval of the hour, the first 60 minutes of the hour, we need to tag in by T-minus 40. So that's 40 minutes before the start of the hour. So that gives approximately 2.5 minutes for the FMM to take in the tag information, process it, get it passed along through the system, so that at T-minus 37.5, when that FMM1 interval starts, the information will be in place. And then the same rationale for what you see under subpart B for the second FMM interval of the hour. It's T-minus 25 to the hour, because then that FMM2 interval starts at T-minus 22.5. So again, creating a couple minute, 2.5 minute approximately buffer to get the tagging information in, so that then it gets passed along through the system. And then so you see subpart C, we say 20 minutes prior to the trading hour for the third and fourth FMM intervals. So you see that's the pattern is different there. Reason being that T-minus 20 to the hour is the generally applicable tagging timeline under the NERC-NASB rule. So there we're saying, well, we weren't trying to deviate from the generally applicable rules. So there we're just saying T-minus 20 applies for the third and fourth FMM intervals. Reason being that the FMM3 and FMM4 optimization runs start after that generally applicable T-minus 20 to the trading hour tagging deadline. So the market timeline happens after the tagging deadline. So that's why the pattern is different for the third and fourth. So next slide, we'll go to 30.5.7.2. So we have those tagging deadlines, and we're basically just defining terms in 30.5.7.1. Then we move to 30.5.7.2. We're talking about what happens, what we're talking about here. What are the consequences of meeting the deadline or not meeting the deadline? And then we're saying that the FMM schedule for any of those FMM intervals is not going to be awarded in an amount that exceeds the lowest of the 3 things you see on the screen. So number 1 is the HASP award. Number 2 is the transmission profile at that timing cutoff that I just talked about in 30.5.7.1. And 3 is the energy profile. So basically, you have a cap on your FMM award. The cap will be the lowest of 3 things, the 3 things being the HASP award that you accept, the second thing being the transmission profile at the timing cutoff, and the third being the energy profile. So the lowest of those 3 things will be a cap on your FMM award for a given interval. And again, that's a cap. That's not, guarantee you'll get that award, but it's saying the optimization will not award your resource anything above the lowest of those 3 things. So then moving on to the next section here, next slide. Thank you. And this is sort of really just a repurposed, revised bit of language that's in the existing tariff, noting that there can be intra-hour schedule changes. So if you have a hourly block award, then the point of that is that it's a set amount. It's not going to change across the 4 FMM intervals of the hour. But there is the other types of intertie schedules that do have a change within the hour. And so 30.5.7.3 is talking about that. And that we're saying that, the FMM schedule can change within the hour, but it's never going to go above the amounts that would be capped based on what I just talked about in 30.5.7.2. So that's still going to be a cap, even if you have a intertie schedule type that permits changes within the hour. And then the next, so there's two paragraphs there. The second paragraph really is just a existing language moved around. The idea that the ISO will change the energy profile on the scheduling coordinator's behalf if there's the intra-hour schedule change. We have a functionality that automatically makes updates to energy profile, but, and this was something we made clear back in the initial filing, we're doing that as a service for the scheduling coordinator just to make things easier, but you know, ultimately it's on the scheduling coordinator to make sure the appropriate energy profiles are updated with intra-hour scheduling changes. So it's still, we're not accepting responsibility for making sure there's compliance by the scheduling coordinator with all the various tagging rules, but if everything's proceeding as planned, the ISO will make the change on your behalf, but just, you know, don't tune out completely, just sort of check up, make sure everything happened correctly. You know, technology sometimes has problems, and we were saying in particular here, the point was the ISO is not taking on responsibility for a scheduling coordinator's compliance with the tagging rules, but we'll try to make things work as well as we can and try to help out as best we can to make sure everything kind of flows through when we have the inter-hour schedule changes. Okay, then the next slide, please. And then finally, this was just a sentence that was, if I remember correctly, it was stated multiple times in the current tariff section, and we're just consolidating it, just making it a simple statement in one place. Everything we talked about in terms of the market timing, we'll adjust energy profile with intra-hour schedule changes and so on and so forth. And then, but of course, that's regular market operations. If we have a reliability related curtailment for something that's not happening out of market optimization, but there's reliability curtailments, then the ISO may modify the energy profile. So it's just sort of having a little bit of a carve out saying everything we've talked about so far is about the market running based on economic optimization, but then of course there's times when the ISO needs to make manual adjustments, and in those cases, basically it's saying the rules we just talked about get set aside, and so we can modify the energy profile in those cases. So I think that was it. Do we have the next slide? I think that was it in terms of the tariff. Yeah, okay. So I wanted to just explain the rationale, the thought process on how 30.5.7 was reorganized. And I'll note that we didn't prepare red lines of these changes against the existing 30.5.7. The reason being is it was significantly reorganized. Sections, you know, section 30.5.7.1, for example, that you saw here, really doesn't correspond in any way to the existing 30.5.7.1. So, you know, seeing the red line isn't really going to highlight the changes because it's basically all changed except for a few things, like, for example, the sentence you see on the screen here. That sentence is basically in the existing language, but it's in a different place. It's sort of I thought it would be more confusing than illuminating to show a red line. So in the FERC filing, we'll show that because that's, I think, a requirement of under FERC rules to show a red line copied there. So we'll see it there, but we didn't prepare it for these purposes because I thought it would be more confusing than helpful. So with that, we'll, I think, open it to questions if there's any questions or comments about the draft tariff or why we're doing this in the first place.
As a reminder, if there's any questions, just go ahead and click the raise hand icon located above the participant window. You might have to click on it just to make sure you can see it, or submit through chat. But Stacy, do you see any questions in queue?
I do not see any questions in the queue so far, no.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
well, we'll get that in a moment if anyone has any questions. I think at the beginning, Danny mentioned this is a tariff filing we'll be making, and you know, if anyone has any comments or questions that lead to incremental changes to what we showed here, then we'll have to, take that back and evaluate. But assuming there's nothing significant coming out of this call today, then we would hope to get the tariff amendment filing at FERC, pretty soon. Like we've said before, I'll stress again, this is not something that has, an implementation element to it because we're conforming the tariff to current implementation. So it's not like, a lot of the other initiatives where you'll see where we have to factor in when we can implement into when we file at FERC, but there's no such concern here. So, we would just try to get it filed at FERC as soon as we reasonably can, which might be, I don't know, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, something like that. But this is not something that you would expect to linger for a while. We'd be ready to pull the trigger pretty quickly here. So with that, could we maybe just see again if there's any questions, comments?
Yeah, I don't see any questions, and I will go ahead and just make sure that everyone knows that the slides for this meeting and then the tariff clarifications is posted on the miscellaneous stakeholder meetings. And also, if you have any questions, send them over to ISO Stakeholder Affairs at CAISO.com. We did have like a few announcements since we are launching the new website for CAISO.com, so it'll be coming later this month. And also we have a stakeholder symposium later this year. So we'll be having that registration launching around the end of this month as well. So we'll have that sent out through a daily briefing. But we also want to just invite you that if there's any training sessions we have here for the CAISO website, it's coming up on May 23rd and 29th. But I don't see any questions. A lot of people are logged in, so let me see, but none in my queue. So I think we're good to go. Oh, we got one. Bethany, let's go ahead and unmute Bethany. And please introduce your affiliation as well.
Thank you so much, Bethany Aces. Just quick sound check to make sure you can hear me.
Yes.
Thumbs up. This is just a clarification question for Danny. You had mentioned a paper that you guys had posted approximately a week ago, and I'm looking on the website and I see the Intertie Deviation settlement dated for 5/3, but when I open it, it has May 9th. And so I just want to double check if that's the paper you're referencing in the material I should be looking at.
Yeah. Yes,
okay,
that would be the paper.
Thank you so much. That's all.
Awesome. I don't see any other questions in queue. Awesome. So Stacy, you can go ahead and close that call for us now. Thank you so much for everyone for attending. Have a great day.
That concludes our conference. You may now disconnect.